Hey guys, Matthew here. So this is going to be the episode number 6 of the BTB series, and I want to talk about something that is basically asked to me all the time when I'm streaming or on my Discord and whatever, and especially since I've been streaming the 200C challenge, which is where I started with 200 chaos, and I basically tried to flip to a mirror in as least time as possible. I wasn't at full efficiency the entire time, but now we're becoming more and more min-maxed as we get more things figured out. That being said, we have reached the goal of the mirror. We're actually way past that. We're flipped over 200x worth in about 30 hours of active playtime. So it's been about like a 5 plus exalt per hour, uh, and even sometimes the 6 to 8x exalts per hour. So it's been absolutely incredible, this flipping challenge. Um, and the worst part, or the best part, I guess, is that it's in a league that's pretty much dead. So if you do want to see how I go about it, basically you can tune into my stream, twitch.tv/pathofmath, and you can learn directly from me and ask me all the questions you want. You can also do that in the comment section of this video. So anyways, one of the questions I get asked the most by far is literally, uh, how do you know if an item is good to flip, right? How do I know if I should flip this item? How do I know if this is good? How do I know, whatever. So basically what I always tell people, to know if an item is a good flip, there's two rules. First thing is, does this item have good supply? Second thing is, does this item have good demand? If the item has both good supply and good demand, chances are it's a good item to flip. Now there's another rule, which is basically not necessarily a flipping rule in general in terms of like items you want to flip, but for flippers and traders themselves. And the most important rule as a flipper or a trader is to stick to your prices. If you price check an item and the price macro says that it's worth 30C, put it up for 30C. Do not undercut yourself. There's no reason to do that. Literally stick to your prices, and that's how you'll become successful. If you're consistently undercutting yourself to try to sell items quicker, that's basically when other people like me are going to buy your items underpriced and sell them for their actual value, because I don't mind sitting on the item for an hour, for 2 hours, for 6 hours, because I know what it's worth. And you probably knew what it was worth as well, you just didn't want to wait. So unless you need the currency right here and now, stick to your prices. So that's basically the three rules when it comes to flipping, trading, and now, if you know about these two rules, does an item have good supply? Does an item have good demand? Now the question is, how do I know if an item has good supply or if an item has good demand? And that's basically the second question I get asked the most when I'm streaming. So I'm basically going to show you guys exactly how to tell if an item has good supply and demand. So we're going to use PoE Watch because it's pretty much the best website for this. PoE Ninja is not as good in terms of supply and demand, but it is better in terms of pricing items. So PoE Watch. Let's go under currency, and I'll use something that I used in the first day of my flipping career, if you want to, or journey, if you want to call it that, where I turned one Exalt into 200C into more than 30x using only two items and flipping those two items only, and that was basically frigid fossils and rusted bestiary scarabs. I'm saying that, and I'm using these examples because they're markets that are pretty much dead at this point, because they've been overused and oversaturated so much, because I was flipping them and streaming it, so a ton of people just kind of copied me, and it killed the market rather quickly. So find your own items and find your own flips using the method I'm going to basically show in this video. So, frigid fossils. Now, basically, there's a couple things you need to understand before you get into this. This, basically, the first number you'll see here is the change. So this is basically the change of price of the item in the last 7 days. So here we can see that frigid fossils went down 1% in the last 7 days. This is basically the number of available item of, this item at this time, like right now. It doesn't mean right now online, but right now in the stash API, which does not mean for sale. It just means online, right? Or not online, but in the league at this current time on the stash API that is public, there's 24,100 frigid fossils available. Now here we have the daily. So what this means is, once again, it doesn't mean that there's 2,248 frigid fossils being listed for sale every single day, but it means that in the last 24 hours, there has been 2,248 frigid fossils uh, being, being picked up by the API. Does that mean there's been 2,248 new frigid fossils hitting the economy? Probably not. It just means that the Stash API has picked up 2,248. And this number, the last one, is basically how many have been listed in the entire league. Once again, not necessarily for sale or anything, or unique ones. It just means the API has picked up 142,445. So these numbers are nice, but they don't really tell you anything. What's important to see if an item has good supply or has good demand? Well, I guess technically the supply is pretty easy to see here, right? We can see that the numbers are massive, therefore the supply is there. Now the question is, massive supply does not mean massive demand. An item could have incredible supply and yet nobody gives a shit about it. A good example for that would be like loosened fossils or something. Let's see where those are. So for example, or like metallic fossils, right? Uh, there's a ton available now, but or sorry, there's a ton available, but there's not that many, actually hitting the market because nobody uses those things. And that's not even the worst example. Look at loosened fossils. Loosened fossils are literally dog shit. If you look at the availability versus how many are listed on a daily basis, sorry here, it's it's really bad and you can see it by the numbers. But let me explain to you guys how I see it by the numbers. Because just saying you can see it with the numbers probably doesn't say a whole lot to you guys necessarily. So what you're going to do to really diagnose the item and see what it looks like, you're going to click on the item to come up with a little bit more information. So here in the first you'll have prices, and this is basically going to tell you guys everything you need to know in terms of prices, in terms of statistics. So you'll have, the mean, the median, the mode. If you've ever done statistics, uh, you'll know what these are. If not, don't worry about it. It's not very important. All you have to know is basically that the median means that 50% are being priced over this and 50% are being priced under this. Therefore, this is kind of like an average, the median, right? Now, the count search. This this is where you'll see all you need to see to know if an item is a good flip or not. Also, sorry about that notification. So these two lines, the red line is, as you can see, the now, which is the now available. Now available, at this time in the league. The green is the daily available, which means how many are being listed daily versus how many are actually available. As you can see right now, why I said this is becoming not as good as of a flip as it was, is because the number available right now is becoming higher and higher and higher as the time goes on, right? Yet the number available daily is staying pretty much the same. So what does that mean? That means the number of daily available new fossils or relisted fossils is staying the same, yet how many that are actually available is getting higher. So what does that tell us? It tells us that there's less people who want them or who buy them or who use them than people who actually list them or sell them, right? So what does that mean? That means the uh, the demand is probably becoming less, which is what I said about the fact that I said that this thing crashed. And the reason for that is they've become super expensive. When I started my flipping journey, right, and I turned 1x into like 30 on the first day, frigid fossils were like 1C. I was buying them for 1C and I was selling them for 3C very, very, very quickly. Uh, and that was working super, super well. Now, as you can see though, the this line and this line are fairly linear in correlation to each other. Yes, this one is going upwards and this one is kind of going downwards, or somewhat more in a straight line, which is linear, which is good. And this one is going like an upward trend, but it's not bad. It's not like a huge spike where it's consistently becoming more and more and more, and this line is staying the same. So what that means so long as these two lines kind of stay the same, right, it means that the supply of daily fossils matches how many are basically available at any given time. And what that tells us, what that means, essentially, is that the supply matches the demand and the demand matches the supply as well, right? Both of them in correlation to each other uh, kind of mean that they're they're a good flip. Essentially, that's all this means. If those two lines are fairly linear, one to another, or parallel, I guess you could say, linear in correlation to each other, or parallel, essentially the same thing. That means it's a good item to flip. So as you can see, this was a really good item, and then as time goes on, and like right now, for example, as I've been flipping them for the past week, and the price got up, started really rising, it's becoming more and more of a an uphill climb on the available now versus the available daily, which means there's less demand that there used to be because there's more available now, yet the supply is staying the same. So if the supply is staying the same, that means the only thing affecting the now is the demand for the fossil or the demand for the item in general. So let's take another example. Let's look at Blessing of Esh. Blessing of Esh. See, there it is. Very apparent to see that these are very bad to flip. The daily is fairly linear, right? It's a straight line. That means every single day there's just about pretty much the same amount being listed and available. Well, not necessarily listed, but being picked up by the API. On the other hand, the now is going up and up and up and up. So what does that mean? That means that these new ones that are being listed on a daily basis are not being bought, are not being used, and do not have any demand. As you can see, this is not linear in correlation to each other. This is not parallel whatsoever. This is literally almost perpendicular. Not quite, but I'm exaggerating, but this is bad. This is not an item you want to flip. This is not good. Let's do a final example. Let's go with corroded fossils. Corroded fossils, as you can see, started off fairly well. The started off very well actually. The available daily was less than the available now. If the green line is over the red line, that basically means that uh, there's more people putting them up for trade, right? There's more demand for them than there is supply because there's less available compared to what everybody's actually putting on top of the market at that point. So as you can see, around the week 2 at some point when everybody started using corroded fossils uh, to craft, the prices, sorry, not the price, but the demand and the supply skyrocketed. But as you can see, the lines are on top of each other; they're parallel to each other, which means the supply was meeting the demand. Therefore, that must have been a very good item to flip. So, after explaining this, hopefully you guys understand supply and demand, because it's not necessarily super intuitive to just kind of look at a line and be like, yeah, this is what this means. But hopefully you guys can use this information that I just basically gave out and make the best out of it. A little sneak peek basically of the 200C to 1 mirror challenge. We turned basically 200C into 34,000 chaos, and it's actually way more than that. The only reason this says 34,000 chaos is because it doesn't account for plenty of things. This game per hour, you do not have to care about it because I haven't been playing for the last couple hours. I've only been watching streams and trying to sell stuff that I have. So I'm not actively trying to make currency, therefore I'm not actively playing the game. So I'm not actively counting this towards the challenge. It's just basically trying to sell stuff or letting things sell. So this is basically a little bit of a um, little sneak peek of the video that's going to be coming up when we have the physical mirror, because I know that if I made a video right now, people would be like, clickbait, you don't actually have a mirror, dislike. So we're going to wait to actually have a mirror bought up, and then we'll make the video on the 200C to mirror challenge. Anyways, though, that's basically been it on about the supply and demand in Path of Exile and how to figure that out. And this basically allows you to figure out what item is a good flip and what isn't. So before I leave, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon, Alex, the other Alex, um, FixFaxer, Francesco, Val, Jose, Kai, Stan, Vengeance, Cory, MT, the man who wishes to remain anonymous as well. All of you guys have been such amazing support. I cannot thank you guys enough. Um, so that's basically it for the video. Remember, if you want to, watch me live, hit me up on Twitch. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment. That's going to be Matthew signing out. Until the next one. Peace.